Technology, diversity, wine, the redwoods, and everything in between. Welcome to the Northern California Bay Area, and one show takes you inside the real estate that makes it all happen. This is By the Bay.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to By the Bay. I'm your host, Dan Ancheta. Thanks for being here again for another thrilling episode talking about Bay Area real estate in San Francisco Bay Area. Today, I have the pleasure of having Mike Brennan from the Mill District development happening in Healdsburg, California, here to talk about that project specifically, but also we're going to have a discussion about development and housing in general. Mike brings incredible expertise in this. He is a local person who grew up in the Bay Area, Santa Rosa and Windsor, as he'll tell you, and he represents the developer named Replay that is developing an old mill site that was a lumber yard, as I recall, and they're turning it into a destination residential and commercial development. Hopefully I did that justice.
Perfect.
Mike, thanks for being here. So let's jump into the big topic here. Tell us about the Mill District and how you got involved in the project, and let's learn about the project.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
Because I've seen it being developed for a long time.
Yeah,
right.
It's and everybody's been watching it now for a long time.
I was curious about it. I'm glad that we're here.
Yeah, no. Finally, you'll start to see some vertical progress. But it's been a 6-year journey. The company I work for, Replay, the partners originally had a company called IntraWest. And for people familiar with IntraWest, they were the largest developer in North America at one point. Oh, okay. They built Squaw Valley. They built Mammoth Mountain and owned Mammoth Mountain. They owned Whistler Blackcomb in Canada. They built Keystone and Copper Mountain in Colorado. They had about 28,000 employees at one point.
My goodness.
And sold that company to Fortress Capital in 2007. So timing was on their side.
Wow, great timing.
Yeah, right before 2008.
Wow,
but,
okay.
So they sold that for about $3 billion. And the senior partners were, they were young. And so at 2010, they said, let's get the band back together, and did some real estate consulting and then started acquiring projects. And several of them had done work in this area. Now they're based out of Vancouver, Canada.
Okay.
But several live in the United States and knew wine country as a whole, had done some work in Napa, and one of the partners had done some work at Mayakama at the golf course. So knew the Healdsburg general area. And we got a call from a gentleman, Jim Hyde, who a lot of people in Healdsburg know. He owns a place called Craftworks, terrific guy, and said, hey, there's a mill that's they're looking to expand. It's a win-win situation. They're moving to Cloverdale. Would you guys like to take a look at this? And they flew down, and typically these type of acquisitions might take months or years.
Right. A lot of due diligence. They've got to look at the property and all this other stuff.
It took one day.
One day.
They said
they knew it.
They said this is
sure.
it, and they put a significant amount of money in an escrow and said, we'll take it.
Nice.
Because 10 acres in downtown Healdsburg is never before, never again.
Right. So this is the property so we go to, you have to correct me because I'm from Petaluma, so I don't know, the Healdsburg Square.
In the plaza.
Yes. God, I get that wrong all the time.
So
Man,
as you come in off 101,
yeah,
you pass the Golden Arches.
Yes.
There's a McDonald's.
The McDonald's on the corner, which they recently remodeled, which is nice. I
get my iced tea there every day.
Okay.
So behind that is 10 acres, and it's essentially from the McDonald's to the roundabout.
Okay.
There's 1,000 feet of fencing that you'll see now, and a little sales office, and all the construction's happening behind that fencing. So it's a significant piece of property. I mean, it's almost the same size as the general downtown area itself.
So it's huge.
It's huge.
And the plan is for luxury. Is that the word we're looking for? Luxury condos?
Yeah, it's designated mixed use.
Okay.
So we have approvals for a 53-room boutique hotel.
Okay, cool.
About 135 for sale residences. And then we have almost completed, you can see right now if you were to drive past there, we have a 4-story, 40-unit affordable housing rental apartment complex. Like any development in California, you can't build without
you have to have an affordable
doing
component.
a certain amount. But
so you decided to actually build that instead of doing an in lieu fee?
Well, we couldn't. In Healdsburg, you can't do an in lieu fee.
Oh, interesting.
So, yeah, you can do that in Windsor, Petaluma, Santa Rosa, and
Sure.
other places. Healdsburg, they demanded it. But I would say one of the things about the team that I work for is we were only required to do 24. And we felt that it was better for us to be good stewards. And plus, there's a housing shortage, so let's do more. So we decided to build 40. It's actually 40 plus one, which is a middle income part of that for the manager to live in.
Nice. Okay. So I do want to talk about the kind of housing shortage in general and how this project plays into that overall thing, overall issue later. But I do want to kind of focus on like the project itself. So commercial component, hotel, obviously that's great for tourism. It's going to collect TOT taxes. It's going to have other things for that local community to grow. You're also the incoming president of the local Chamber of Commerce there.
Yeah,
so
next year.
Next year. Okay. So this is an issue that is overall going to help Healdsburg with the tourism, and it's going to be more of a destination.
Yeah, and you mentioned TOT. One of the things that Healdsburg did many years ago was that they determined they were a tourist town.
Yes.
So that's where the most significant portion of funds for the city they're collected through the TOT tax, so for the transit occupancy tax.
Yeah, for the listener.
Bed tax.
Yeah, exactly. So this is when you go to a hotel.
Yep.
The listing is $250 a night, but then all the little fees you pay.
Right.
One of those is a transient occupancy tax.
And the city of Healdsburg collects somewhere around $14 million a year, I believe, something like that.
It's a big revenue generator for most municipalities in Sonoma and Marin, Napa counties. The tourism is a huge driver. So we're seeing all these hotels, but people ask all the time, like, why are all these hotels popping up? They're kind of everywhere. Well, because bed nights mean dollars into the city's budget. Right.
Well, one of the fortunate things with us as well, though, we were the last hotel approved before a moratorium was put in place. So there'll be a smaller hotel in downtown that was also granted, and that was owned by the same folks that own Hotel Healdsburg and H2.
Right.
They have a smaller kind of a long-term residential hotel that'll be in, but we will be the last kind of significant downtown hotel that's built, unless that moratorium is somehow banned in the future.
Interesting. Okay, so the site, 10 acres. Go to those numbers again. There's a boutique hotel. There's the affordable housing development there. There's a commercial component because it's mixed use.
Right.
What do you envision happening in the commercial space?
So a big portion of that will be eaten up by the hotel itself. So you'll have some light retail, food and beverage. We'll probably have some sort of, we've always envisioned a cycling component. Healdsburg's become a destination worldwide for people that ride bikes. And we have always felt like there's an opportunity for what we call a velo club, which is a place for cyclists to gather, maybe a place to take a shower, get your bike fixed, hang out, have lunch. And so there isn't really a place like that yet. And we've been exploring having something like that there.
Sonoma County is a huge destination for cycling with the Grand Fondo and all these other things that happen. It makes a lot of sense when you have people. We want to attract people to come here for a specific reason. Right, so you got the wineries, you got the all these different attractions. The cycling community will come from all over the world and spend money in our community, which is great for our local economy. So that's cool. So like I said, on-site food and beverage, that makes a lot of sense. And then tell me about the residential component.
Yeah, so we were approved for 138 total for sale, and it's interesting. When we started this, we knew that we had to build a certain level of a luxury component,
and that's the background of the developer, right? They're not doing subdivision work in Clovis, California. They're doing luxury properties. No offense to Clovis, out there. But they're doing luxury properties, Squaw Valley.
Right. Replay started as a company called IntraWest. So they were the largest developer in North America at one point, and basically earned their stripes by building ski resorts and owning ski resorts.
Right.
Whistler, and they did the Village at Squaw Valley and Mammoth Mountain and Copper Mountain and many others. So they know this type of environment. But it's also part of the component, and we'll go off on housing and different things, is the cost of getting this project entitled is so significant that only a certain type of developer has that deep pockets to be able to get this thing approved.
Right.
Because before we ever even put a shovel in the ground, it was tens of millions of dollars just to get the approvals to get it to where we needed to. So in order to, again, achieve some success in the project, we have to build a certain level of housing. Right. And now it actually works quite well with Healdsburg because, as you know, Healdsburg has really kind of a few things that people look for. They want to be near downtown, and to have that walking distance to downtown, you've got to buy usually an older home and then rehab it, and that's millions of dollars. Or you want to buy a big estate outside of town, and that's millions of dollars. But what Healdsburg lacked was brand new, turnkey, kind of luxury, modern, in modern architecture, modern in conveniences. There was nothing quite like that. So we fit this niche that doesn't exist anywhere in Northern California. I mean, this is a type of product that you would see if you went to a resort type town, a Scottsdale or a Vail or something like that. And as people are aging, we have an older demographic in Sonoma County.
Absolutely.
We're seeing many people who are coming from the area already who said, oh, I don't want to be in a 2-story house or 3-story house or have a 5,000 square foot house or a big property. So the convenience of having we call it luxury, but a turnkey, really single level condo is been amazing. I mean, it's exceeded my expectations. I wasn't quite sure what the response would be.
Yeah.
But we have 43 residences we're building. We've sold 25 so far, and we're just coming out of the ground. And of that, I think 15 are from Sonoma County and Healdsburg already.
That's not what I would expect.
Yeah.
Not at all. I mean, so we do, from the mortgage side of the business, we do a lot of second homes for high net worth individuals coming from Silicon Valley, San Francisco, that want that other place. And they're moving to Healdsburg to go into Russian River area. They're finding those estate type properties, they're spending $3, $4, $5 million on those. And, I would have expected, looking at the project as I've looking at the website and looking at the floor plans, everything else, which we'll put a link in the show notes to the site so people can go and visit and look at the actual project there. I would have expected they would be coming from out of town, out of state, out of country, even.
Interesting that what you're seeing here. I mean, I'll get off on a little bit of a tangent.
No, go for it.
It's interesting is we of the 25, so I said probably 15 or so already from the area. The rest are, as you might expect, Marin, San Francisco, San Mateo County,
100%.
Contra Costa County. They're all they're touching the Bay, Silicon Valley area, and they know Healdsburg. They want to be a part of the community. But one of the things that COVID did as well is it really changed how people work. Obviously, we all know that, and also, excuse me, how people think about how they live.
For sure. We see a lot of people, looking for that other space. And actually, a lot of the clients that we work with that wind up moving to Southern Sonoma County, I'll ask them, why did you decide on Petaluma? Why did you decide on Pengrove Cotati? Then they'll say, well, we were driving to Healdsburg and we stopped by here and we thought, this is really cute. We could see ourselves raising a family here. And it's gets us close enough so we can go to the city, but we can also go to our favorite places on the weekends.
Right.
And it's an interesting kind of dynamic where, up and down the 101 corridor, you're seeing different pockets of places where people want to live and want to visit and want to spend time. And it's interesting that, Petaluma, Southern Sonoma County, if you have to continue to commute to the city a couple days a week, it's probably as far north as you want to go, but it also gives you access to the Healdsburgs, the Russian Rivers, and all those other places.
And that's a whole other conversation because Petaluma's gotten to be a pretty cool place.
It's a great place.
My grandmother, my dad was born in Petaluma in 1935. I mean, I grew up being a part of this community. My great-grandparents had a chicken farm here. Petaluma was not that cool. For a long time, it wasn't a very cool place. And now it's become very hip. It's a great place. We love taking our kids to Brewster's. I mean, it's a great place.
So I think it's interesting because I got to say this term and I may regret this later, but people can, like, the big evil developer type of thing, right? And it's this thing that we talk about in public where it's like, self-serving people who are coming to try to, like, change the face of the communities that we love. I don't necessarily buy into that, right? I think that the developers are an essential part of our housing system.
Yeah.
And you can't have every single developer be a little sleepy homegrown developer that's doing 5-6 unit developments. It just, the economy of scale isn't there. You can't do it over the long term, and you can't actually build enough housing units to make a difference. So I do want to talk about like the development in general.
Sure.
But I want to make sure that we kind of wrap up with the overall kind of project of what's happening at the Mill District, because I know that, it's important. Community awareness, we've all been driving past it, and I've looked at the website, but I'd love to kind of wrap up like the makeup of those units. You've got those high-end condos that are being built there, and what's the makeup of the rest of the units?
So we get back to we took all this time to plan and decide what we were going to do, and one of the things that we decided was that this had to be an extension of downtown. It had to be a new and unique place. This isn't a gated community. It isn't a private enclave. It's really a new area. That's where we came the name Mill District. We actually workshopped all kinds of names, and then somebody, I don't remember who it was on our creative team, was just like, well, it was an old mill, we just called it the Mill District, and we all looked at each other and went, well, that was easy. Like, what the hell were we thinking?
We spent all this money.
We spent a bunch of money
name.
trying to think we were smarter than we were, and it lended itself. And now people talk about it in town like it's already there. We know it's going to be a part of it. So the other part to that was, if we're going to do something special, we needed to bring in some special people. So we're working with a company out of Marin called Vita Landscaping. Don Vita is probably one of the foremost experts in the entire world in land planning and landscaping. Don's office is down in Santa Rosa. He lives in Marin, but he's had a place in Healdsburg for like 35 years. But he's done all the Four Seasons all over the world.
Wow.
And so he has a lot of really well done projects and brings a lot of respect to that. So we grabbed on, and then we said we want somebody unique from an architectural standpoint, and we went to Olsen Kundig out of Seattle. For those, I wasn't even familiar with them at the time. Olsen Kundig is consistently within Architectural Digest top 100 architects in the world. Mm-hmm. They typically do these very bespoke, unbelievable homes. They're on the cover of Architectural Digest all the time. They just were on there last year with a home that was like $57 million. Just gorgeous work. And they work with a lot of natural products. They do a lot of wood and steel and glass. These homes are a bit more modern and contemporary. And we love the look. And we thought, if you go to Healdsburg, take a drive up like Matheson Street, you'll see 7 or 8 different types of architecture, from colonial to modern and all these different mishmashes. So we thought, we'll bring in something different. And over time, now people are really embracing it. And so having Olsen Kundig as part of it was great. And then SB Architects out of San Francisco to do the hotel, and they're really well known. And the owners live in Marin, so they're part of the community as well. So we brought in a great team.
Really smart that an investor who's not from the area goes and finds the best of the best that have spent time in there, so they can continue the character of what's happening in the existing community and add on to it instead of try to like change it.
Well,
fully.
And they're good people. They really are. I mean, again, I don't want to defend the big bad developer as people think of it, but they came and hiring people like myself, my counterparts on the team are all local. So, they didn't just bring in mercenaries from other parts of the country.
Right.
Like I said, my family goes back many generations here in the county. My counterpart, Josie, and my marketing team has been in town for 25 years, and her and her husband are part of the town, and other people on the team are all part of the community. So we cherish Healdsburg and want to make it great. So, the project itself, we're building these beautiful condominiums. They're from small studios that are 500 square foot, what I call a weekend crash pad. They average a little more than about 2,000 square feet, but they move all the way up to, we have what we call our garden homes, which are essentially like a ground floor penthouse. So the only 2-story residences we have, but they're about 3,400 square feet. They live very generous, big 18-foot ceilings, and then we have 5 penthouses. Interesting though, going back to kind of our demographic is, we have 5 penthouses. We've sold 3 of those penthouses. Each buyer already is a Healdsburg resident, and each buyer is a permanent resident. So these are not, people flying in from LA. These are not people flying in from, New York or whatnot to live here. We've had, of the buyers, as I mentioned before, most of them are Bay Area. We have had a few from out of state, but they're moving here permanently. And the interesting part was 2 of the folks that were from the East Coast, one has a daughter and grandchildren in Santa Rosa, so they want to be here full time. The other one has a daughter and expecting grandchildren and lives in Berkeley, and a sister-in-law in Berkeley. So they're moving here to be a part of this community, and they already embrace Healdsburg. So
I think that's a really important message to get out, because looking at that type of development, you might assume, like I said earlier, that these are houses that people are going to buy, come to once in a while, fly in on their private jet. Like that's the price point on some of these. The penthouses are not inexpensive. They are.
Yeah, they're $7 million.
$7 million, right. So a certain type of demographic is the ones who are going to own those houses. And it's really nice to hear that they're not just going to be used 2 weekends a year when they want to come to some type of wine event or something like that. That this is like a place where people are going to actually live. And then, like you said, spend money here in our community and support local businesses and do all those things that help us all in general.
It's a community within a community, and these are people that the most important thing is as we're talking to them. I know every buyer. That's part of my job, is I get to meet them and talk to them. I mean, anybody can come by a place that's entirely within their purview. But I think after meeting us and understanding the community, people kind of self-select if they care about the town, if they care about Healdsburg, if they want to be a part of the community. They're our kind of buyer, right? They know, they automatically kind of assume, hey, this is my kind of place. If they want to go live in somewhere and just not be bothered and fly in every once in a while, there's other places.
They'll probably choose a state outside of town somewhere that no one knows if they're there or not, right? But this is right in the heart of the town, and people are going to see the lights are on.
We're not getting any celebrities in our place because people will know they're there.
Yeah, right, for sure. So I think that's really cool, and we'll make sure that we link up to the show notes and so people can see it. And if someone wants to see one of those, they can reach out to you, and we'll make sure they know how to call you.
The phone rings, I answer. So
cool. I want to talk about development in general, if that's okay, if we pivot to that. Just a quick, we were just meeting each other for the first time. So early in my career, I worked for a very small developer, and we did small unit development. We started off doing like lot splits and moving a house to the front of a lot and doing an easement and building a little house in the back, and kind of progressed through some different types of development. So I have some experience there, but not very recent from that seat. But we talk to a lot of real estate professionals on the show, and that's my job, is to talk to real estate professionals in all different kind of walks: commercial people, elected officials, people who work for the government. You're the first developer rep that we've had on the show, and I would love to hear your perspective about, from your chair, what does it look like to actually try to develop real estate in Sonoma County, in the Bay Area, and maybe other experiences that other places have you worked? Because we hear this story of there's not enough houses. We still don't have enough houses. The fires ripped through and took out a bunch of our housing stock. We were behind before the fires. We're still behind now. The state has these mandates on you got to build a certain amount of houses, and prices continue to go up. And economics will tell you that there's a supply shortage. Demand continues to exceed, driving prices up, right?
Yeah.
Kind of basic.
Yep. Yeah.
Wherever that line thing works. So walk me through, in general, obviously, and you can be as specific or not specific as you care to be. What is it like being a developer here right now?
I'll give you specifically for this project, and then in general a little bit, just because, my dad has been in home building and development in Sonoma County for many, many years. And
so this is not your first experience. You've seen this over extended period of time.
I said, I grew up in Santa Rosa. I'm a Pioneer High grad of 1990, and half of my friends are in construction. So in one way or another, they're in the HVAC business or concrete or framing or drywall. And I grew up, my fiance is in the plumbing business, right? So I've grown up around every trade there is. I have friends in every trade, and we all work together to create a product. And so from a development standpoint, what I've seen in this project is the city of Healdsburg worked fairly well with us. I mean, I think that you have a challenge in any development. It took more time than it probably needed, And that's just that's the common theme, I think, with development is time is money. And, people want to look at developers sometimes and think, oh, well, it's all about profit. And if I look at whether it's a massive home building company like Toll Brothers or something like that, it's a collection of people. And there's a lot of guys that are just pounding nails and trying to earn a paycheck. The more time it takes to get things approved, the harder it is for everybody, and then the more expensive the product is at the end. So I think just from Sonoma County, my observation in the towns in Sonoma County, and I have friends that do entitlement work, and I'll give you a specific example of he's been trying to work on a hotel within the county, and it's taken 7 years to get it approved. I mean, that's insanity. When you take that much time, all you're doing is making lawyers and consultants rich. And to do study after study and all of the, I mean, I get the environmental concerns. I'm not mitigating that. But at some point, you've got to move forward or you've got to deny the project. And I think that Sonoma County and many of the towns have had a really difficult time over the last few years doing things. Now, the fires, that was totally different. I mean, I had, I can't even count how many people I knew lost their homes. The house I grew up in was gone. Everybody I knew. That gave the county and the city, Santa Rosa specifically, cover to just get it done, right? Like, go get it done.
And they did.
And
right?
it did. And they got it done. Look at how fast things have happened. In Fountain Grove, you can hardly believe that there was a fire.
They took the brakes off. And
and I kind of feel like, well, maybe you ought to continue that a little bit more.
Well, I think they are in a way. So just Tennis Wick was on the show. He's a personal friend and was on the show maybe a month ago. And he basically said, hey, we learned a lot of lessons during that. And we want to build housing and we want to build the right kind of housing. And we want to be friendly to developers and we want to meet our goals for housing stock. And it's very interesting. Like, so we're learning from those experiences. And we're trying to keep some of the good, obviously, pump the brakes a little bit, but not go back to the days where the assumption is can't do it.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to hear and for you to continue about, okay, so entitlement takes time.
Yeah.
And that basically means you have a piece of land that is underutilized or it's just raw land, right? Mm-hmm. And you have an idea of what you want to do with it. And there's a process you have to go through. You have to identify what the zoning allows you to do, right? And if you need to change the zoning, that's a whole process. And if once you actually have the zoning figured out, you have to come up with the site plan and show the jurisdiction of whoever is approving the approval authority is, what's your plan for this housing? And then you have to go through an architectural review, and then you have to do this, and you have to go work with PG&E, and you have to work with the water company. You got to do these studies, and God forbid you have salamanders on your property. Like, and these are the things, right? We all should be done, but this is just from a naive perspective. Shouldn't there be a way to do that pretty quickly?
Yeah, I agree, and that's exactly it. Is I think that sometimes people don't know what they don't know, and I think maybe you're right. Maybe the fires did illuminate some opportunities for people, and now that they can change the processes going forward. I mean, I think that I'll give you as an example. Like, I worked in Florida for 11 years, and I worked for a developer. If you have an area, once you get it approved, and that typically doesn't take but maybe a year to get something approved from start to finish.
About in Florida,
it
doesn't take a year here.
No.
It could take much longer.
Unless there's a huge water issue or something.
Sure.
But it's generally taking about a year to get some sort of approvals. Once it's approved, to move forward to go ahead and go get a house built, right? You could literally walk down with plans, and so I'm just using this as let's say it was a Fountain Grove neighborhood or something that you had a lot. You walked in with housing plans. You handed them a check for $35,000. They stamped the plans, and you move forward. That's the kind of thing. And so again, the macro is it takes a long time to get things done. But once you have approvals, you should be able to go at 100 miles an hour. And so I think there's a way to do both. I mean, I'm not trying to mitigate anything. I mean, those issues are important. Environmental issues are important. Water issues are important.
Traffic studies need to be looked at.
Traffic studies, all those things.
Yeah, you can't,
because once you screw it up, it's harder to fix and more expensive. So you got to get it right. But yeah, there needs to be ways to get it done much, much faster. And I think one of the things that people don't understand as well is I think the county and the cities, they don't have all the resources. So a lot of those people that are getting things approved, actually the developer's paying their salaries. So the consultants that the cities use,
right,
the city's not paying for it. It's passed on
through.
through to the developer. So there's a huge amount of expense that goes into that. So I don't know, knowledge base maybe would help if we got more people that were able to help get these things approved. I mean, we know that housing is a number one issue. Then let's focus.
I think housing is the number one issue.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Everybody I know, especially in the business world, and I won't use their names here, but many of my friends that have restaurants, they can't be opened on certain days because they just don't have enough staff. I mean, and that has a huge impact on everybody.
It's interesting you say that because I was in downtown Petaluma and I was looking at the hours of one of the stores. I won't name it, but it was like 11 to 4.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you have this store on Petaluma Boulevard and you're open 5 hours, 5 days a week?
Yeah.
How is that possible? And I asked, and they said, we don't have staff.
They don't have staff, and you're paying people a lot more, and it's really hard. I mean, this is just, anecdotal. My niece's husband, whose family owned several Mexican restaurants, and they sold them recently and moved. But we were laughing, and I actually, even last night, I said, man, I went and got a burrito. It's $20.
Yeah.
Like, it used to be like, oh, that was
$6.
nice. $6 or $8. I got a burrito, like when I get one all the time. Well, why? It's not that even the food costs are that much.
The rice and beans are not that much more expensive.
You've got, you have less staff and you're paying them more money, and that's just blanket for everything. And but it all comes back to the housing issues, right? Like, correct. Because
it's the number one expense that most households have. It accounts for 40 to 50% of people's, take home pay goes to their housing and housing related expenses. Because when we're qualifying for someone, we're just looking at the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, mortgage insurance, HOA, all those types of things, like the cost of owning the house. But that doesn't include having PG&E and water and cable and all the other things you need to do, let alone put food on the table these days. And it's incredibly expensive. And I look at, the aging population that we have, and I go, where are the young people supposed to raise a family? Where are they supposed to, if you're starting out in your career, does it really make sense that you have to move out of the area to go get started and come back when you've reached a certain level of success?
Like, then you can't come back.
And you can't come back.
Right? It's harder to come back. Yeah, no, it is tough. And I was kind of mentioning before, I mean, here I'm 51 years old, and I'm of the age where many of my friends are starting to look towards retirement. I can't even imagine that. I'll be working for the next 35.
What else are you going to do with your time? You gotta work.
My dad's 87 and he still works. He said he's retired now, but he still works. A lot of people, and it's sad, are choosing to now. They're looking at waiting for their kids to get out of high school, hoping they can get to Texas or Idaho or Tennessee, somewhere where they can buy a house for $300,000 or $400,000, bank whatever equity they put into it here, just so they can either afford to pay for their kids' college or at least have some semblance of a retirement in the future. And it's scary. It is scary.
Well, it shouldn't be that way. There has to be a way. Maybe this is my naive look at this, but there has to be a way to do this to make it so that we can build housing that meets the needs of our population today and what we need in the future. There has to be a way to do it without every starter house being $950,000.
Yeah, I mean, there's again, I don't want to get into the politics. I think you're having one of the supervisors in here, and you can ask them. Sonoma County
teasers.
Sonoma County owns hundreds of thousands of acres. There's so much land in this county, and it's not all parks. It's not all wetlands, and not all that. But even the cities own a lot. There has to be, if this is the most important issue that we're facing right now, then everybody all the stakeholders need to come to the table and come up with solutions. And it can't always come down to, well, we need the money now. But what's the most important thing? Do we need housing? Do we need to find a way to get people into housing that works? Well, then there's got to be a give on both sides. Right. And maybe there's developers that say, look, we'll build it for nothing. We'll build it without a profit or a very little small profit. I mean, most builders, people don't think about it anyways. Most builders aren't making 20, 30, 40% profit anyway. I mean, I think if you look at most builders, it's about a 10% profit, which is not crazy.
It's a lot of risk for 10%.
There's a ton of risk when you're putting millions and millions and millions of dollars out there. I mean, again, I won't off on a tangent, but most builders build, if a home builder, you do a standard build and it's 10 and 10. 10 for your overhead, 10 for your profit. That's just the way things have been for a long time. But the county, the cities, all these people can get together and say, hey, look, it's tens of thousands of houses shortage in Sonoma County.
It's on the Sonoma County. Yeah. I don't know what the number is exactly, but it's a lot.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And there needs to be ways to go in, and there's businesses that can be a part of it. I mean, we're in an agricultural area, the wineries. I've talked to people that own wineries and said, look, maybe there's ways to put together where the wineries are the investors in the actual housing themselves. And then some of those, apartments or things can be used for workers at their facilities. And then if it comes to home ownership, there's ways to build things much less, but you've got to start to eliminate some of the fees and time. And, again, if you can get things built faster.
The holding costs really sink a project.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you perform it out and you're looking at, hey, we think it's going to take us 3 years to go from nothing to turning shovels, and then it's going to take us, 9 months to construct, and then we've got, this construction loan facility that we're going to use, and we're going to build these phases, do all that stuff, and it doesn't take you 3 years, it takes you 6.
Yeah,
I mean, you just worked through that 10% profit there.
Yeah,
right. So it just, it's true, and we've just, I don't know. I wish that there was a way to facilitate a bunch of smart people who all really want the same thing, right? We all want the same thing. We all want housing that meets the needs of our population. That's better for the politicians, right? It's better for our communities. It's better for our schools. It's better for our businesses that we have adequate housing that is affordable for the wages that are earned here at all different spectrums in that across the whole spectrum. So I don't know. I want to ask some more questions about the development process in general. What do you think is like the number one thing that slows down the process, or maybe a couple things that slow down the process overall that prevents a project, not just the Mill District, but also just development in general, from what you've seen with your dad's business and other folks that you work with and talk with? What slows down the overall process?
Oh, that's a loaded question. Without trying to offend anybody here in the county, I mean, I think you have a lot of there's a lot of learning curve with some of the political leaders here. And I'm trying to be nice, is that I think what happens is you get projects in front of commissions and councils, and people are confused and they ask a lot of questions, and then they send you away and you come back and it goes, and it's like tennis and it's back and forth. I think that if there were more experts, and there are a lot of good staff, I'm not the staff of most of the municipalities in the county are excellent. These are people that really know what they're doing.
Right.
And I think if they were more empowered to make decisions quicker, then you would have, but there's a ton of, it's just the way that it is. The political process is what it is.
It sounds like staff empowering the full-time staff.
Yeah. Like you have people that you're paying a lot of money. I mean, there's, this is all public record.
Right.
There's people making a couple $100,000 a year that work for the cities and counties here. And they do most of the work, but they're limited in the decision-making capabilities. Right. So then it has to go to
some board
and then,
or something.
Yeah, right. And then it takes a longer period of time. So again, it goes back to the times. And I'm not pointing the finger at anyone in particular, because everybody generally cares. That's right. The one thing, is they all care. But then everybody wants to have their opinion, and everybody, it's politics. That's the way it goes. I think the people that work for the cities, and I'll speak specifically, like Healdsburg. There's some really excellent people that work for the town that know what they're doing, that could make some decisions. Unfortunately, they just can't.
Yeah, I'll tell you from my personal experience working in that field for a very brief time. Yeah. That's not a ton of experience. We would have candid conversations with the staff.
Yeah,
and they would go, "We think this project is pretty cool.
Yeah,
but just to let you know, you got a 0% chance of getting this approved because so and so doesn't like it, and so and so thinks that it needs to be this way." And we would get projects that pushed back because they didn't like our light fixtures.
Yeah, no, they don't like your paint color.
Like,
right?
We this is a real story. We planted. We had a landscape design for a building here in Petaluma, and there was a specific kind of tree that was called out for it. And we couldn't get final approval until we finished the landscaping. We got and we had to get this thing done. And those trees were not available. They just didn't exist.
Yeah.
They were like out of stock. They're out of season, something we called all over, called the nurseries within 500 miles. Nobody had them. So we planted a close cut, like called the arborists. We're like, okay, we don't have these. What's the closest thing we can get? It had exact same thing, but it had a different type of like color flower on it. It was something that silly. Those are the ones we planted, and they stopped the project.
So we're
like,
dealing with
really?
the exact same thing. We dealt with the exact same thing on trees, where we went through meeting after meeting to deal with a specific tree. And it's the most ridiculous thing.
And for me, it's like, just give me the list of the 5 that you let me plant, and then don't make me guess. Just tell me these are the 5 trees that we allow you to plant in our city. Pick one that you like that works best for you.
Well, and one of the things, and I'll go back to our project just to kind of again give you a little bit about who we are as a developer and the things that we did. In order to, if you plant trees anywhere, just go up and down the streets of Petaluma, you have sidewalks that get pushed up, right? So we invested millions of dollars in what's called Silva Cell technology. They look like giant Lego blocks. I mean, they're massive, and they go under the ground, and it's a whole system. And then you build the sidewalks over them. And what that does is it takes the root systems, spreads the root systems out so that they can't push the sidewalks up. It also helps with water retention because it just keeps it moist and underneath there, so you can use less water to keep the trees. So it's a lot of good for the community. And so we spent all this money, and then I looked at some of the trees and I thought, well, it's going to take 175 years for these root systems to even get there, because the trees are not, I thought we were using these big giant trees or something like that. But, it's so funny that you had the same issue over a tree, right? Like it's absurd when you think about it.
And at the time, I remember going back to the person who worked for the city, and I said, just give us the tag and we'll do a bond or something that will come when those trees are available. I'm happy to rip these out. Yeah. We'll donate them. You can put them somewhere else, and we'll put in the right trees. But don't slow down my project. It's going to take me 4 more months to get those trees in. That's what the nursery is telling me. So that means I've got X more holding costs, right? You just killed the profit out of this business. I got to get this done. And I think that's maybe maybe it doesn't happen very often, but it's just one of those things where it's like, let's look at this.
Yeah, maybe it's just common sense, right? Take some common sense.
I understand the mandate, but let's apply some common sense. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's go back to kind of more development focused things. In general, we need to move faster is the number one thing. We were talking earlier about like public-private partnerships. Yeah. How do you see those playing? Like, if you could draw it up, how would you move through that?
Well, again, there's a lot of people that are much smarter than I am. I'm just take it information I hear. I would say, let me take it back for a step. I think one of the things too is you need to look at, when you say you look at across the board housing, you need experts in affordable housing, experts in mid-market housing, experts in market rate housing. The same person doesn't have the knowledge in all of those. There are people that know that each one, and they know how the financing works in each one. They're really, really smart people out there that know each of those, and I'm not even close. I don't know enough about any of them. I listen to and I learn. But when it comes to the public private, I think that goes back to where I was saying before is the county, the cities have to be willing to either give up some land. They own so much land. It's like, do they really need X million for the land up front, or can they say, hey, let's get this project moving, go in with the developer and come up with a plan where they get some of that money back from the profit of the sale or something like that. Or if they're unwilling to maybe they sell it at below market what it is. And again, I think there are, and I'm only speaking for the developers that I know, these people want to build houses, and they want to build good quality houses for families. These are not people that are trying to screw people. They're not trying to go out there and make tons of money and build a shabby product. They want to build good quality products because most of these people put their name on it, right? If it's I won't use their names, but people hear that their name is on their house. And for the next 50 years, that house is known as this X built this house. So they take pride in that. So you want to go with these people that are out there that want to build good quality homes for families. And I think you'd find enough developers that want to work together. Get 3 or 4 of them to say, hey, look at here. You guys come in with the one GC and you are all part of this together. Build it fast, build it at a reasonable rate, and let's sell these at a to people that can qualify. And then maybe where someone like you with a mortgage business, you create mortgages that are specific to this project that give people the opportunities that are making, someone that's making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year that struggles to meet a certain threshold. Now that person can afford a $300,000 or $400,000 house, and you're able to get people in, because that's the dream, right? They get into home ownership, they start to earn equity.
Is the number one equity generator. So if you're looking at how people accumulate wealth,
yeah.
The vast majority of people accumulate wealth through real estate.
So I heard of a statistic. Actually, a friend of mine just told me this the other day, and I don't know whether or not it's true, but I believe him that it's
we'll fact
somewhere.
Check you after the fact,
you can fact check me, right? Yeah. But it's got to be somewhere close to it. He said the average person who does not own a home, or the person people that do not own a home, have an average net worth of about $5,000. People that own a home have an average net worth of $500,000.
That makes sense to me,
right? Yeah. So if you think about that, that's how people are achieving a certain amount of wealth. And what do they do with it? Whether they're helping their children or passing it on to the next generation,
yes,
or whatever it is, it's theirs to be able to do what they want to help improve the lives of their family, 100%. Friends, or whatnot. It's oh my God forbid, they have a medical emergency. How do they tap into that? They get a line of credit to pay for their bills or something like that. So, those are the things, and I think we've all seen it. I mean, I've seen it in my own life where my parents were, at a point where they needed to get a second mortgage to help them through some things. So, I think when people are able to own a home, there's also a certain pride that goes with that, right? You've reached something. I mean, there's a huge amount of pride, and I think that we need to help people. Not everybody can afford a home too. And that's the other thing is, and you can't afford them. I use this, it's kind of a crude term, but people always say, like in Healdsburg, we have this debate and people say, well, we want to have everybody that lives and works here. I get that. I don't live in Healdsburg. I live in Windsor because I can afford to live in Windsor. And I say that with as much love as I can. But, I don't live in Malibu either because I can't afford to live in,
right.
There has to be some personal reality as well that not everybody can afford to live in some of the most expensive places. Sometimes people are going to have to commute. That's just life. I mean, that's part of life too.
Sure. I think that there's a balance there that we can find, that we don't want to import all of our labor from out of the county, that there's
not at all.
A certain percentage of low and moderate income housing that's available that you have to qualify for based off of income restrictions and other things.
Yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense to do, and to create incentives for developers to build those stuff.
Yeah.
I really like what you said earlier about the private-public partnership thing, and thinking about it just on the fly here. Earlier you said, hey, what if you had other companies invest in these things as well?
Yeah.
There's ways that you can do it where, the county goes into partnership with the developer. They have an incentive to fast track those plans and get the development done, right? Because they're part of the ownership team at that point, right? So they can move quickly, and probably a way that you can allocate some of that housing specifically for certain employers that can then subsidize or create incentives for their employees through mortgage programs and other type of subsidies to help with the overall affordability so those people can live here. That's a really interesting concept that I wonder if it is being used anywhere else in the country.
I got to think there's places that are doing that because, one of the things, and again, this is not to come down on municipal employees, but I think you always hear it we got to do this for the cops and the teachers. And I get that, right?
Sure.
But I think when you're a cop or a teacher, you also have a lot of, you've got unions behind you, you've got pension funds behind you, you got a lot of benefits that not, what about the electricians, the plumbers, the service employees? Those are the people that I'm concerned about more too, is not that I'm not concerned about it. We want to have police that live in the community as well. But I'm saying is that seems to always be the easy road, is everybody goes, well, let's do this. And then it's we've got a county filled with all kinds of people that work in all kinds of different industries, not just the tourist industry, not just the food industry or agricultural, but we have a lot of high tech, and we have there's people working in little factories here, putting different widgets and parts and things. We have interesting companies all over the Sonoma County that are they're making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year. That's again, if I lived in Ohio or Illinois, it would be a pretty good living. But we know in the Bay Area that's tough.
You can't get by on $50,000.
No. God, those were the days, right?
No, I mean, you can't. You literally can't. I mean, average rents,
Well, and that brings up another point too, and sorry to get off on a tangent here, but you think about like when it comes to affordable housing, there are these metrics that are in place too that people say there's the low to very low income, and then there's the moderate income, and it's all done on the area median income.
The AMI.
Right? The AMI, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we had this conversation, a few friends, and I'll keep them remain nameless, but a friend that owns a hotel. And I said, what does one of your house cleaners make? About $45,000 a year. And so we were in a room with several business owners, and I said to another friend, I said, okay, in your restaurant, what does a waiter make? About $55,000 to $60,000 a year. I said, okay, so let's take $60,000 a year plus the 45. Let's say they're a couple. Mm-hmm. There's $105,000, right? At $105,000, there is no or very few opportunities for them in the rental market that has the kind of fixed income rentals, right? So like there are rentals for people that are, if you're a family of four making less than like $60,000 a year, there's tons of stuff. There are ones for people that are like making, above $120,000 a year, but there's very few that are fit that. They're just kind of market rate rentals. And it's interesting is those are the people I think of a lot is that workforce housing. That's that juicy middle of that workforce housing. And again, it's crazy to even think $100,000. I mean, that, used to be a hell of a lot of money to most people. But when two people are making $100,000, they're still barely getting by. Right. So how can we help that? Because that's what I think is a huge, huge group of people. It's that people that are, let's say they're making, 80 to 115, 120,000 and they're a couple. That's a big, big portion of people in this county.
It is, and they make too much money to qualify for any subsidies, and not enough money to actually afford the market rate housing.
Right.
I deal with it all the time where people are like, "What do you mean I don't qualify for that program?" I'm like, "You make too much money."
Yeah.
Like it's $90-something thousand is the limit AMI on some of these programs. And if you meet the requirements of the programs, you get preferred interest rates, you get lower mortgage insurance, you get all sorts of different perks. It's like we need to look at that. We need to look at that differently. There's got to be a way to create programs, to amend the existing programs so that it actually helps people in that segment.
Absolutely.
Where you can't just look at the income. You have to look at the affordability. Yeah. Like there has to be some type of affordability index type of thing because $120,000 a year in Sonoma County is not the same as $120,000 a year in Eagle, Idaho.
Right. Oh, it's not the same even in Bakersfield or Fresno.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the same. It's very different in the Bay Area versus
for sure.
Other parts of the state.
It's one of those things where it's dictated by the federal government, and that is the number that they choose, and they look at an average of the overall county. And let's look at the county. Cloverdale is very different than Petaluma.
Sure.
It's just a different set of economics. So anyhow, fascinating conversation. I am motivated now that based off this conversation, I'm going to put together some type of another episode of By the Bay in the future where we have two guests, and we'll have a developer and a either elected official or someone who works for the government to have a conversation.
Oh, you could have a panel.
We totally should have a panel.
I know
it would be fascinating. It would be really great because I think and talking to being the person in the middle who goes, I want there to be all types of housing. I want there to be affordable housing, missing middle housing, luxury housing, because I like to work with all those clients. Right?
Yeah.
And I have clients on all up and down the spectrum. And I would love there to be adequate housing for all of the people that I work with because I've got a list of a couple hundred people who want to buy houses right now that either have been beat out of the market or they're so discouraged by how they've made offer after offer after offer and keep getting beat out that they're just on the sidelines. And they would love to own a home. They'd love to have the pride of home ownership, but they just feel like it's out of reach. and they want to be in the town they grew up in. They want to be local because they work here, they love the place, they want to be here. So I'm going to facilitate a conversation. I'm really curious to see how that would go, to have a panel of 3 or 4 people from different perspectives and come in and be. My belief is, and we'll test this out, and we'll come back and we'll revisit this. My belief is that we'll walk away with some hurt feelings, because people are going to be like,
sure,
your feelings are wrong about what my intent is, but that at the end of the day, everyone wants the same thing, which is houses that meet the needs of our population, that people can actually afford to live in, and they work in our communities, then they contribute to the overall economy.
Well, I totally agree, and I think one of the things that'll happen though is you hopefully you'll take a step forward, but that those hurt feelings and the way that this happens is these conversations continue. This is the same conversation I've been having for 5 years.
Yeah.
Same people. It's going to take real political leadership, and I don't know if it's even at the county level, maybe it's at the state level, that really just says, hey, look, be damned with hurt feelings here or there.
Right.
This is the solution that we've come up with, and this is, and it's not one size fits all. Maybe what happens here in Sonoma County is different than what happens in Marin County,
and it should be, right?
Right? It has to be, but it has to. There has to be things that real change that happens, because the longer we wait, the longer it takes. And if we're, the same conversation I had 5 years ago, we could have built another couple thousand units in that time. So I think that there's real, and again, I won't give you a shameless bit of development, but it does take developers like us and others. We're required to build affordable in any project.
Right.
So the more projects that happen that are market rate or luxury or whatever you want to call it, the more affordable that gets built. But let's just make sure it's the right affordable as well, that those people, that the workforce house, we got to house people that are barely getting by too. But the workforce housing, I cannot stress enough for me, and I think seems like you're in agreement a bit, is these working folks here that are contributing to this community in a very powerful way. We got to figure that out for them.
100%. And I think we learned that lesson during COVID, that the frontline worker, the people who are required to go to work, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones that we need to make sure that they have a safe, modern place to live. That is not just the leftover housing, right?
Exactly.
It shouldn't be that way. So we need to do better. And I think there has to be solutions. It's such a affluent, educated area of the country that we've got to be able to figure it out.
I agree.
Well, let's end it there, I guess.
No, this is wonderful. Yeah.
Appreciate you coming by, and I'm going to put this together, and we'll have you back and facilitate a conversation and do like a panel. We'll have to move some furniture around here in the studio and have some more folks come in. And I think it'd be an interesting kind of, and not really like a debate, but just a conversation to be like, hey, let's meet, let's have a conversation with no project between us. Let's just have a conversation and see what comes out of that. I think
this has been fun. Thank you.
Appreciate coming by, man.
Okay.
Stay up to date with Bay Area real estate. Hit subscribe now if you haven't already. Did you enjoy this episode? We love reviews in the Apple Podcasts app. We'll read yours on the show. This is By the Bay.